Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. The Archon of Radishes herself, Nahida, is coming back for her first rerun. In today's video, I'll be going over 50-ish things to consider for pulling your very own Radish out of the gacha. So I've been a bit slow on making the brutal truth about insert character here videos, but Nahida definitely deserves one. Nahida was released back on November 2nd, 2022, and now around April 12th, 2023, Nahida will be back for all of us to spend our hard-earned Primo Gems on, or we can sell a kidney to use real-life money to fund our gachaholism. Anyway, banner history aside, let's not dilly-dally any longer, and with a hop, jump, and button squish, let's hop on over to all the things to consider. Starting with her normal attacks, Akara. Nahida is a Catalyst user and has a 4-hit combo. Like most Catalyst users, her normal attacks are automatically infused with their element and have standard ICD. And also like most Catalyst users, they're a bit sluggish to use. But honestly, compared to most other Catalyst users, Nahida's normals do feel better than most of them. Her normals have a thin, linear AoE, and it's a great way to quickly apply Dendro and/or trigger a spread to activate her Tri-Karma Purification, which I will be talking about in great detail later. As for her charge attacks, Nahida creates a nifty rectangular thing which has better AoE, but also consumes a large amount of stamina and is unsustainable to spam. Her charge attacks can target slightly airborne opponents, which is situationally useful, and just like most Catalyst users, her charge attack has no ICD. Up next is her elemental skill, All Schemes to Know. This is definitely the most unique part of her kit, and I've got a lot to say about it. First of all, the initial hit, whether it's the tap or hold version, makes every enemy hit by it marked by the Seed of Skanda. Then triggering any elemental reaction on any marked enemy will do an instance of Tri-Karma Purification damage to pretty much all enemies marked by the Seed of Skanda. Tri-Karma Purification, or TKP for short, scales off both attack and elemental mastery. And if we factor in spread damage, then TKP scales way better with elemental mastery than with attack. Nahida can generate 3 Dendro particles on TKP activation once every 7 seconds, even while off field. TKP has a 2.5 second cooldown with the ability to reduce its cooldown, which we'll talk about in the next section. Not only this, but the Seed of Skanda lasts for an egregiously long 25 seconds. Thus, this allows Nahida's elemental skill to tag and forget for the rest of the rotation and then some, as long as it's the same wave of enemies. There's also no ICD on TKP, which means that Nahida applies a lot of Dendro while off field, and TKP applies a very unique 1.5 gauge of Dendro. This allows for Dendro to be maintainable on the enemy even with blooms being triggered, which is invaluable for maximizing the amount of blooms for her team. And it's also important to note that her TKP does not snapshot. Now let's talk about the tap and hold versions. The tap version of her elemental skill is very quick, but has a small radial AoE and a slightly shorter 5-second cooldown. Again, tapping and holding applies the Seed of Skanda, which leads to the TKP damage. Anyway, the hold version is extremely unique, as Nahida enters picture-taking mode to selfie up to 8 enemies with enormous range. This range is so large that she's able to tag things nearly across the entirety of Abyss 12's arena. She also has basically perfect super armor while taking her pictures, and you can even increase your mouse speed to swivel super fast to tag enemies even more quickly. But wait, that's not all. Her passive 2 adds up to 80% bonus damage and 24% crit rate to her Tri-Karma Purifications, which is a huge free stat gain for her. But keep on waiting, because TKP also activates versus shields. This makes it one of the best options for breaking Hydro and Electro Elemental shields, although admittingly it's pretty useless against the other Elemental shields. And if you thought that was all, well, that's not all, because it even has some exploration benefits. You can collect vegetables and flowers with her Hold E, up to 5 of them at once, and you can even read the minds of many Sumeru NPCs. As we can see, this is one of the most stacked elemental skills in the entire game. Up next is Nahida's Elemental Burst, Illusory Heart. This Elemental Burst's gorgeous aesthetics do come at the cost of a rather long burst animation, taking around 2 seconds. As is the norm nowadays, Nahida's Elemental Burst is also a bit convoluted. It effectively improves her Tri-Karma Purification. Having a Pyro, Electro, or Hydro teammate will improve her Elemental Burst. A Pyro teammate will provide bonus damage to Tri-Karma Purification. An Electro teammate will shorten the TKP tick intervals, and a Hydro teammate will increase the duration of her burst. With her burst already having 100% uptime with its 15-second duration and 13.5-second cooldown, adding even more time to it via a Hydro teammate provides outrageously good uptime for her Elemental Burst. Having 2 teammates of that element will further increase that buff. These teammates' element-based burst buffs apply to Nahida's TKP even while she's off-field. Notably though, Nahida's Elemental Burst doesn't gain any buffs from having Cryo, Animo, Dendro, or Geo teammates. The next major thing about her Elemental Burst is that it provides the on-field character 25% of Nahida's Elemental Mastery. The buff itself is actually snapshotted, so increasing Nahida's Elemental Mastery during her Elemental Burst won't increase the buff itself, and Nahida can provide herself this buff if she stays on the field. This buff can go up to 250 Elemental Mastery, so what that means is that Nahida can go up to 1000 Elemental Mastery to provide the maximum 250 Elemental Mastery to the on-field character. And although Nahida's Elemental Burst only costs 50 energy, I do find myself often struggling to having it ready when I need it, so some energy recharge is definitely recommended. Now I always try to answer the following question in these The Brutal Truth About Insert Character Here videos, and that question is Nahida free-to-play friendly? Absolutely yes. Nahida is one of the best characters in the game across all levels of investment. Admittingly, very new players who haven't even gotten to Sumeru yet will struggle to level her up, but this is of course remedied by going through the story. Nahida even has amazing early Constellations 1 and 2. Constellation 1 provides one of each element teammate counter to her burst, which allows you to have all 3 burst buffs up despite not having any of those elements on your team. Constellation 2 provides a wonderful 20% damage increase to bloom damage and around 18% increase in damage to spread and aggravate damage. And what's particularly great about these is that these are in multipliers that are pretty rare to come across, like Bloom's critting, which this is the only source of in the game right now, and also Defense Shred, which is fairly rare. Farming artifacts for Nahida is a bit tricky admittingly, as you do want good Elemental Mastery main stats or Dendro Goblet or Crit Circlet, but the keyword there being or, as you do have some flexibility for her main stats depending on if you want to maximize the buff she provides your team or if you want to maximize her damage. And farming the Gilded Dreams and Deepwood Memory Dungeon is a great use of resin, so you do have that going for you. So that leads us to a few last general things to consider for Nahida. Nahida being a Catalyst user means that she's even a great Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers user for some interesting setups. Nahida is uniquely qualified to support Melt Ganyu since she's able to reapply burning consistently. Although having Constellation 1 on Nahida helps a ton with this as it does shorten the tick interval. Nahida is by far the best off-field spread DPS character, while also providing a lot of elemental mastery for your on-field character. Nahida is also a great on-field character since she greatly benefits from her own buff, and she applies Dendro constantly with her normals and charge attacks. Nahida's signature weapon is admittingly a bit niche, and the buff it provides your team is admittingly small at only 40 elemental mastery, but it's still a decent weapon for Nahida. One thing that Nahida really has going for her though is that she's insanely flexible, and you can basically use her on any Dendro team. Now she's not perfect and she does have situations where she does struggle with, like for example supporting a character like Cyno, especially against multiple waves of enemies, because if you're relying on Nahida to apply Dendro to the enemy, well unfortunately swapping off Cyno will cancel his elemental burst. Nahida can also struggle against multiple fast waves of enemies, as her elemental skill has a 5 to 6 second cooldown. Very importantly though is that all the other Dendro characters are actually quite good. And Nahida, while being overall the best Dendro character in my opinion, is still competing against some great baseline free-to-play Dendro characters like the Dendro Traveler and even characters like Yao Yao. While Dendro Traveler certainly isn't as good as Nahida, they're usually good enough for most of your Dendro-related needs. And lastly, Nahida is a solid speedrunning character, supporting many Dendro-related teams to have fairly competitive times. So yeah, there was a lot to say about everyone's favorite, smartest, radish in all of fiction, Nahida. Honestly, it's hard to go wrong with polling for Nahida, and I think Dendro teams will still be good in Fontaine. I expect Nahida to age like Raiden. Still an incredible option, but with similarly performing options introduced in the future, and a meta that doesn't necessarily center around Dendro, even though Dendro will still be good. Anyway, let me know what your plans are regarding polling radishes. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.